awful, it's tragic, it's frustrating, because we have had so many people die, young people, older people, from Texas to Florida, dying mostly because of the risk of rip currents. And so I want to talk about that today, just to try to educate everybody as best I can about what a rip current is, and why it is maybe underestimated, or why people might be a little bit naive as to the dangers. So I want to start off behind me. You'll see some things to keep in mind about rip currents. So only swim near lifeguards. There are a lot of our beaches here that don't have lifeguards. There are a lot of beaches across the country that don't have lifeguards. Even when there are lifeguards, that's part of what can lull people into a false sense of security. I myself am a former lifeguard. Now, admittedly, I did not work at the beach, but as part of my training, I did have beach training on Hallandale Beach, Florida. I had to spend about a week out there doing training, learning how to rescue people out of the ocean water, although most of what I did was at pools. That's a whole different thing. So avoid swimming when the water just looks rough. I mean, a lot of times you could just see that there are large waves, and of course that's when surfers head out there. And I think you guys basically know what you're doing if you're into that sort of thing, but most people are not. And so don't overestimate your ability to swim. Never swim near jetties or piers. And as far as what those are, I'm going to explain here coming up in just a minute. And also, when in doubt, stay out. If you have any doubt about how dangerous the swimming conditions are or about whether it's safe, probably best to just keep it on shore, and just don't get in the water. It's just simply not worth it, right? It's not worth your life. So let's talk about what a rip current is. It's called a rip current because you have an area of sand near the coastline. Sometimes it's even a sandbar, which is where the water goes down and then comes back up. And sandbars are fun because you can sort of swim out to them and then the water gets really shallow again. Sometimes the sandbars are really far from the shore. Sometimes they're a little bit closer. But this presents a whole bunch of challenges. So first of all, what we're seeing here is that this is a rip in the sand. Water gets pushed up against the coastline, and then gravity has to pull water down. If there's any part of the water that's higher than the rest of it, then gravity will pull it down. And when gravity wants to pull it down, it has to have somewhere to go. And so if there's any weakness in the sand there, any sort of a channel, it'll rip through that and create this current that pushes out from the coastline. Let me move this just a little bit, okay. So it'll create this current here, which will pull you out. Okay, so this is the beach here, and you're just swimming there, minding your own business, and all of a sudden, boom, you get pulled out away from the coastline. It does not pull you under. I know that's one of the myths. So it doesn't actually pull you under the water, but what can happen is that people see themselves getting forcibly pulled away from the coastline, start to panic. And if you're not a confident swimmer, you could start to tire yourself out. And the thing about swimming is, especially in the ocean, or in the Gulf of Mexico, as soon as you take that breath of salt water goes into your mouth, and sometimes you breathe some of it into your lungs, I mean, sometimes it's just game over. You need to be rescued. Another thing that happens, and this is something to consider, is that sometimes you could be standing at the beach, in the Gulf, in the Atlantic Ocean, and you can, maybe you're in up to here, and you can stand. You're comfortably standing, you're okay. Here come the waves, and you're kind of dealing with them, and it's not a big deal. You're having fun. Well, you might walk in an area just a few feet away where the sand drops off, where the bottom drops off. Now, you're maybe caught off guard. Maybe you're not experienced in going into the water very much, into the swimming at the ocean or the Gulf very much. And now all of a sudden, the water's up to here and the waves are coming, okay? Now you're in distress. And this is where if there are lifeguards around and they're scanning the water, then they might be able to see that a swimmer is under distress and dispatch somebody to go get them. And they could paddle out in a board and do that. They can throw you a ring buoy. They could just go out and swim after you, or in some cases, they could go after you like on a jet ski watercraft. But if you are not an experienced swimmer and all of a sudden you're in this part where the water is going down, where the surface is, what you were standing on is all of a sudden going down, then you can get yourself in a lot of trouble and people panic. And then once you start to panic, you could run out of energy really quickly, breathe in that water, and then it's sort of game over, unfortunately. Even people who are able-bodied and strong have succumbed to this. We just had over this weekend 3 young men, I think they were 25 years old, 25, 26, from Alabama, drowned off of Panama City Beach in a rip current. We had a mother and father of 6 drowned off of Stewart Beach, Florida, in the Atlantic Ocean. We just had a 17-year-old drown off of the Galveston coastline in a situation just like this. And I think it happens when you're standing on a sandbar or you're standing on a shallower part of the shelf, and then all of a sudden it drops down. All of a sudden the water's up to here. There are waves, you get pulled out, and now you find yourself in a lot of trouble. I have some pictures here to show you to kind of help you visualize things a little bit. So behind me, so this is like an aerial view. This is like an overhead view of what you would see if you were, you know, in a helicopter or something looking down. So you see all the white caps here where the waves are breaking. And then all of a sudden there's this darker area, and then you go over here and there's more of the white caps. So this is the rip current. This is what it looks like, excuse me. That's what it looks like if you were looking at it from the air. There actually is a difference to the way the waves look out there. And I can show you this next one as well. And I want to make sure you can see this, because these are some really good examples. So I have arrows here pointing to what this looks like. So for example, here's one rip current here, again, as viewed from the air, where you see a difference in the way the waves look, and it gets sort of elongated, stretched out from the coastline. Also, this one right up there is what it looks like if you were at the beach. So you can actually see where there's white, where the waves are crashing in on the left side, and then also on the right side, and in the middle, all of a sudden, it's kind of dark. And that's because instead of the waves coming in, they're being pulled out. And same thing with these over here. Let me show you these. Again, there's another view of what it looks like here, right, as that rip current is visible from the beach. So we have views here where we can view it kind of from the air to give you an idea of what it looks like, and then obviously from the beach. We actually have, the National Weather Service will issue rip current statements. They'll also issue things like coastal flood statements, coastal flood advisories and warnings and things like that. In this case, for the day today, for example, and we'll see this a lot. Maybe you're not watching this on Monday, June the 24th. Maybe you're watching this, you know, in July or August. It's the same kind of deal any time of the year. All along our beaches, we can have rip current advisories that are issued. So for example, for the day today, places like Surfside Beach and Quintana Beach, Jamaica Beach, Crystal Beach, you know, Stewart Beach, East Beach, all these spots are all under this, what's called a rip current statement. And it's highlighted here in blue. So this is to let folks know that there's a high risk for rip currents. It's never a guarantee of rip currents. But what makes our coastlines very complicated, and what makes explaining all this very complicated, is that it's not like the beach is the same everywhere. We have jetties that are set up at the beach, okay? And this is what it looks like, the aerial imagery. If you were to look down, all along the Galveston seawall, you have these rocks that are built that protrude from the beach. Those are jetties. And they're put there to eliminate beach erosion. There's an overall movement of water from the northern or northeastern part of the Texas coastline downward. And so if it weren't for these jetties, the beach would disappear basically. It would just be eroded, and we wouldn't have any beach anymore. We'd be constantly trucking in, you know, new sand to fill the beaches. We just wouldn't have them. So those jetties are there to protect that. And But they do interrupt the flow, and they create eddies, little spins that occur next to these things. And so that's why you are urged to never ever swim near a pier or a jetty, because we already have rip currents that are enough of a danger just at the regular beach away from the jetties. But as you go closer, and you see a lot of people will go walking on these jetties, sometimes you'll fish off these jetties, sometimes they'll even fish off of these jetties. And when you do, instead of just having that regular rip current that comes out, you could end up with these little swirls that form off of the edge of them. So it really is, they describe it like being stuck in a bathtub or something like, not a bathtub, stuck in a washing machine bathtub. The water's as warm as a bathtub. They describe it as being caught in a washing machine. You're just spinning around, you're being thrown around. There are rocks that are under the surface, and then there are rocks that are adjacent to where you were just walking. And, you know, I mean, you could hit your head, you could just get pulled out to sea, you can get, breathe in all of the water that's surrounding you and end up in a situation where you're drowning. So this is happening way too much. And I know the Galveston Beach Patrol, it's not like they can go tackle somebody and force them to not get in the water. There are red flags that are up. This is the flag system. So you have green flags means smooth. Yellow flag means to use caution. A red flag means dangerous swimming conditions. And then there's a purple flag that means sea life. So generally refers to like jellyfish, or maybe if sharks have been spotted or something like that, then you'll see the purple flags up. So, it's very, very sad because we report on it. We've been reporting on it like almost daily. Absolutely, a couple of times a week, we've been reporting on drownings either in Galveston or in Florida, both on the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic coast of Florida. All of them are 100% avoidable. It's avoidable. Like everything in life, I understand this. There are risks involved with everything. I mean, there are risks in driving a car. There are risks in leaving the house. I definitely get that, and I don't want to discourage anybody from enjoying the beach. I mean, I know I myself grew up on the beaches of South Florida. I was in the water and all that, but, one of the reasons, I suppose, is that, it's an advantage to being a strong swimmer. It's also an advantage to being out there not alone. But even with that being said, we've seen groups of people drown. A lot of times you're supposed to not swim without a buddy, that kind of thing. Well, we just had a group of 3 guys drown. And we had 2 parents drown. And in fact, the incident that happened on the east coast of Florida with 2 parents, and they were about 50 years old, I think 49 and 51. Their teenagers were with them. So you had at least 4 out there that were at least teenagers or older, 2 teenagers and a parent, that all got caught in this rip current, all got pulled out to sea and started to panic. The teenagers tried to rescue the parents. They couldn't. They swam as fast as they could back to shore to get help, and by then it was too late. So now you have a group of 4 that could have potentially all drowned. So even the advice of swimming with a buddy or not swimming alone doesn't always guarantee you anything, right? Of course, everything in life can be dangerous, as I was saying. Flying a plane is dangerous, driving a car is dangerous. Everything's dangerous, but this is completely avoidable. Well, it looks like I've lost my feed here in the back monitor. We have a show that we're doing here in 5 minutes, Forecasting with Friends. I'm recording this at 10:55. So I'm gonna hit pause right now. By the way, daily, we record a daily show, Forecasting with Friends. Well, no, I'm sorry, we don't record it, we do it live every day at 11 a.m. So I'm gonna hit pause right now, and we're gonna continue talking about the tropics and rip currents. All right, sorry, I had to take a brief break to do one of our other shows here. Busy day, but bottom line is, so as I was saying, okay, these drownings are 100% preventable with the knowledge to know that there are hazards out there as far as the depth of the water surprising people, maybe not, overestimating your ability to deal with turbulent water and things like that. I did want to show you a look at our coastline and the fact that rip current hazards can be made more complicated by jetties. Now, it's actually, according to the Galveston Beach Patrol, it's illegal to swim near jetties. A lot of people don't know that, but this is what jetties are. So they stick out from the coastline. They're built, engineered, as a means to control beach erosion. If there were no jetties there, then after a while, the flow of water would just basically erode all of the sand away from Galveston Island. There'd be no beach. If you go on Google Maps and look at all the beaches around the United States, you'll very routinely see jetties. I know where I grew up in South Florida, we have them too. And they're for the same reason, to avoid beach erosion. They also, since we have the Galveston Ship Channel, there are some complicated things, like a lot of beach communities that have ports. They'll have to put these really long jetties before the port, because otherwise the sand will be pushed into the, because they have to dredge the water to get it really deep where the ships go in, and they'd be constantly dredging it if it kept getting filled up with sand. So they have to put things like bigger jetties. But the bottom line is that these jetties create even more turbulence. So you already have what I described, which is the water coming in, ripping a channel into the sand and then being pulled back out. But then you have all of these turbulent eddies like that one right there. When you swim near a jetty, I know it rhymes, when you swim near a jetty, there are these swirls that can form. And people have described it as like getting caught in a washing machine kind of thing. So if you're caught in one of these, you're in big trouble. If you're caught in an ordinary rip current, like right there, you may be in trouble. And by that I mean, if you can avoid panicking, try to do your best to just calmly float along with the water. When the rip current ends, and it will, then you swim to the side of the rip current, and then you could just swim along the waves coming back in. That's the ideal thing. You can also do your best to wave for help from the lifeguard. But the reason that I titled this The Silent Killer is that, again, being a lifeguard, they always taught us drowning is quiet. It's not loud. A lot of people see, like in movies, I know when I was a kid, if I was watching Jaws or I don't know, whatever, like there's always somebody in the water going, help, help me, brrr, that kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about. Rarely does it happen that way. And that goes for swimming in the Gulf, that goes for swimming in a lake, that goes for swimming in a pool, anything like that. And we hear that all the time, and I'm really passionate about it because I did that, for a lot of years. In fact, I even had a good friend who had a child die at his pool. The pool was packed, so it was very busy. It was difficult to see. Obviously, the parents were not watching the child. Some people think that having lifeguards present means that you don't have to watch your kids, which is ridiculous. But the bottom line is, it is quiet. And to prove this point, think about, we've done so many reports of there's just an epidemic over the last several years of apartment complex pool drownings, kids drowning at apartment complex pools. And in the vast majority of the time, there are adults everywhere. But the children are not going to yell for help. Adults that are drowning in the ocean are not necessarily going to yell for help. If you get caught in a rip current and all of a sudden you go under because your feet are no longer touching the sand, that's it. People might turn around and not even know what happened. So it's a very sad thing. I think if we spread awareness as much as possible, we can maybe avoid these things happening. And I hate to just tell people don't get in the water because, I told my daughter that yesterday. We were talking about it. And I said, it's not even worth it to get in the water. And then my 12-year-old, right? And then she's like, well, you can say that about anything. You don't even leave the house, right? Yeah, I know, I get it. But I'm just trying to make the point that you have to, weigh the pros with the cons. All right, before we go, how about a quick tropical update? So last week we had the first storm of the season make landfall, Tropical Storm Alberto. Immediately behind that, we had another system that was an area of investigation. A weak area of low pressure did not become a tropical depression or a storm, but interestingly, it moved into the exact same area that Alberto was located in, right around Tampico, Mexico. Farther out into the Atlantic, everything is fine, except for there's one tropical wave, right there, that one. A tropical wave is just a trough of low pressure. If you were to look at it on a pressure map, it's like a hump, and it's usually displayed as a dashed line. And the reason it's not like in colder areas, you would call it a front. But in the tropics, it's not a front because there's no difference in one of the characteristics of the tropics is that there's really no difference in temperature. Temperature is almost the same everywhere. So these troughs move along, and it really is just like a pressure trough. It's not a, the shift in direction doesn't bring any significant change in temperatures. So it's kind of like a front, but it's a tropical wave. This is a closer look at the wave right there, the way it presents itself on what we call visible satellite imagery. Visible is the best. I always like rave about vis because you can't use it at night and you can't use it early in the morning or late at night because the sun has to be shining down on the clouds, because visible is exactly what it sounds like. You're looking at the clouds. So you can see much more detail with visible satellite. Infrared is very useful too, but we use it mostly because you could use it 24 hours a day because it detects temperatures instead of visible light. But with the visible light, you could see all the little details of sort of the individual cumulus clouds and things. So it's kind of a neat thing. So let's take a look at this. This is a look at rainfall projections for the state of Texas. So over here, we have not that much rain, and you see this big streak? Well, this is some tropical moisture in the southwestern United States heading into Arizona and New Mexico. It's what we call the monsoon and the monsoon season, which begins like late June, July into August. That's their rainy season. Also, obviously, it's their very hot season, but it's when they get a lot of their heaviest rain and flash flooding that takes place over there. There was already some very serious flash flooding in Arizona this past weekend. So it isn't just, places in the tropics that get it. I wanted to show you this, so I'll leave you with this. This is a projection of the GFS computer model taking us into next weekend. Let's see, I think I have this running through Saturday. Yeah. So coming up at Saturday right here over the Yucatan, that's the tropical wave that I just showed you. So it's going to take a whole week to move across the Caribbean Sea, and then by the time it makes it over here to the Yucatan, that's when we'll have to watch it a lot closer, because if it makes it into the Gulf of Mexico, yeah, there's a slight chance that we could get a splash of rain from it. So, all right, so just to summarize everything, guys, please trust your gut, stay out of the water if you have any questions. Parents, keep an extra close eye on your children, whether there are lifeguards present or not. And even for people that are able-bodied, young men and women, if you are not a strong swimmer, you may not want to go that deep into the water. We've just learned the lesson way too many times, and we don't want it to happen anymore. So that'll do it for today's Mondays with Mike. It was an extremely hectic Monday for me, so it was, I hope you learned something, but bear with me with some of the changes that I had to do here. Again, as always, shout out to my mom and my brother Neil. It was my mom's birthday last week, so happy birthday again. Happy belated birthday. And Neil's doing good. I had a very, very nice lady who was at Academy, and she said, "How's your brother?" And I said, "He's doing very well." I said, "Thank you so much for asking." So, some people really do listen. Neil did great. He had a eye surgery a couple of months ago, but anyway, everything went great. So anyway, so that's that. Have a great day, everybody. I have the Fox 26 News at noon here, because this is recorded right before the noon show. So that's coming up in 39 minutes. I would also need to eat and drink something before the newscast. It's been a heck of a day. So everybody, please be careful out